Hello everybody, it's Mike here, Came From Scratch with another free tool, and I love showcasing these free tools out there, and we live in spoiled times because there are so many options out there. And today what we were looking at is MeshMolder. MeshMolder is completely free, and basically, if you've ever used Sculptris, MeshMolder is like Sculptris, just still under development. If you have never used Sculptris, Sculptris is a very cool program that stopped being developed like 5 or 6 years ago when the maker of ZBrush bought it. Continues to make it available for free, but nothing new is going on. So having just Sculptris that is under development is a pretty cool thing. Now, meshing is getting, or sculpting is getting more and more common. For example, you can do it directly inside of Blender. There are other programs such as Mudbox and ZBrush out there, but this is a completely free tool that can be slotted into your workflow. So let's check it out and see if it works for you. But before we start, let's get the bad news out of the way. This is a Windows tool. It may run in Wine. I don't know. I can't tell you. So if you can run this on your Linux install in Wine, please do let me know in the comments down below. But for now, this is a Windows only product. So, Linux and Mac guys, I'm sorry, this video really isn't for you. Unless, of course, it works in Wine. So stick around, it's still worth checking out, and maybe you can pester the developer into supporting installers for your platform at some time in the future. So, MeshMolder, where do you get it? You go to www.meshmolder.com. Of course, I will toss that link down below, always do. And you will see the most important thing here is the download page. Head on over there. 1.0 was just released back in August, I believe. That's the version we are going to be showcasing today. There are older versions available if for some reason you want to go back in time. But again, it is 1.0 we are showcasing. Come over here, you look at the About, and you will see this is free software. Basically, he is accepting donations if you want to help support him. But the most important line is this bottom one. The software will always be free and available on this page. Use the software as you wish, both as a hobby and commercially, and good sculptures. So you can just use this guy however you want, in whatever way you want, completely free, which is pretty amazing. I can't believe just how many options we have. The installer itself, the 1.0 is like 6 megabytes in size. It makes an installer, might take up a little bit more space after install, but this is a minusculely tiny program. And let's go take a look at it. So this is MeshMolder loaded up. When you first load it, here is your initial screen. Pretty straightforward and simple. You basically you pick your starting mesh. You've got a choice between different geometric shapes. I'm going to stick with the sphere in this case, but the other thing to notice here is there's this load mesh option. The load mesh option gives you the ability to import PLY and OBJ file formats. Now, OBJ is ubiquitous. This is the wavefront object format created by Silicon Graphics back like 10, 15, 20 years ago. This is the standard format for transmitting static meshes between 3D applications. It is very well supported by just about any program out there. So you have absolutely no problem getting your models into this to start sculpting. And you can also export using OBJ, so you can slot the MeshMolder into your pipeline with whatever program you're using. So if you're using just straight to a game engine such as Unity, Godot, or Unreal, they all have an object importer. If you are using Max, Maya, Blender, any of those programs, they all have an object importer as well. So it can easily be slotted in. Again, I'm gonna stick with the sphere, so we'll close this down, and you'll see here is your starting shape. And then these are your sculpting tools. I can move that down slightly, so let's just grab that and move that down. Pretty cool. Over here, you've got your display options, so we can turn the grid on and off. We can set wireframe, so you can see the denseness of your mesh with the wireframe on there. You can set points. And you can do symmetry. Symmetry is very cool. So basically, see how I have the circle on the one side and the red dot on the other? Well, when I do one thing or a stroke on one side, it will automatically be symmetrically done on the opposite side. And then down here, you have your palette of tools. You have to click something to be able to get the mouse over, which is a little irritating. But you'll see here, this one is add. This one here is subtract. So again, click it, and then you can get the mouse over for it. This is the penis tool, the move tool. This here is the pinch tool, and so on and so forth. If you've used any sculpting programs, these are starting to get pretty standardized. There are ways to basically, if you're working with virtual clay, these give you the ability. So here what we're doing is adding more clay. So that little circle is where the clay is going to be added. You'll see symmetry is on, and we've just raised that area of our mesh up. Now you'll notice I can come over here and change the size of our modifier. So you see we're adding a whole lot more clay at a time. And as we do more, we add more. Now, you might most often you're going to use add. You're going to use subtract a lot, which is kind of doing the opposite, sort of pushing it in a bit. And then you're going to be using smooth a whole lot. Now, smooth is right here, and that's just for roughing over the edges and making what you did look less terrible. And so basically you'll use raw surfacing and then you'll smooth it out to make it look clean. But then you can also come in here, so you might want to do like a sharp crease. Well, that is an option. So here we'll dial the size back. You've also got intensity. That's the strength of your brush stroke. Here you can see you can add some fine detail. And then we got cool stuff like this guy. And this guy allows you to paint with an alpha on your shape. So here's, we've got 3 vertical bars, for example, or like here, we'll use this one, like a scales kind of effect. And now if I hold down the right mouse button, we can orbit around. The other controls are pretty straightforward. Middle mouse button for, or scroll wheel for zooming in and out, and then middle mouse button and the shift key for panning around. So those are your controls for navigating. So again, we have this alpha brush on, and let's jack up our size slightly. And then you can see it's going to paint with that particular shape in our virtual clay. And that's kind of it. You use this combination of tools, all these different shapes and tools and widgets and things. Like, for example, we can snake out. So let's bring that down. And this guy's going to basically like hook into the clay and like pull it out into the surface. So if you need to do like spines or protrusions, and then you'll see I just kind of pulled it into itself. That was bad. Of course, there is undo support. So pull out, pull out, pull out, pull out. I heard that before. So there you go. So you see, that is essentially it. There's nothing really that difficult about it. That's the cool thing about sculpting in general, to be honest, is the tools are very approachable. It is like working with virtual clay. You have to learn what like a dozen different tools do, and then you can just start playing for the most part. And then if you get in trouble and you make something that's crap, almost always you can just keep smoothing it until it's fixed and looks good. So that is essentially the workflow in MeshMolder. Then once you're done that, you've got a lot of really cool options. You see up here, we've got kind of summaries. We got vertex and face information of our particular model. And then over here we can do, so we've been mostly dealing with mesh editing so far. We've also got remeshing tools. So if I want to add a whole lot of precision to this guy, so here let's go in wireframe mode. I can come here and do a subdivision. So you can do subdivision levels. Like there, we can see different level of subdivision surface. So we're way down. We're down to 1,352 faces, and I can like jack that right up, and we keep adding more and more detail. So we're back to our full amount, and I can do a full-on subdivide and make that go even more detailed. And the cool thing is, I am on a 980 GPU, so a 2 generations out of date, and the performance here is flawless. It has never really slowed down for me, which is quite impressive. So the graphics performance of this guy is quite good and is quite useful. Now that is going the one way, that is adding more detail, but if you're working with games, a lot of times you're actually going to want to go the other direction, which is to reduce the polygon count, and you've got that option as well. You come in here to mesh reduction, you can pick about your target amount of polygons, so say 15%, and then process, and then that very quickly reduced our polygon count way down. Now I don't know if I'll still have, I won't have access to my subdivision levels, unfortunately, because we kind of started that over. But you see, we just cut our polygon count down to a third, or I guess a 15th. 15%, sorry. So you've got some ability to really switch between resolutions really, really quickly. You've also got remeshing functionality here. So I can set my target, so say 128, and then do a remesh. Now this one can actually take some time. In that case, it didn't, but basically that will go over the topology again and clean it up for you. So go back here, we'll look at our wireframe, and there is our overall. So let's see if I switch this out to 256 and do a remesh. We'll see what exactly it does to our surface. And boom. So you see, we got a lot more resolution going on. So let's say we want to go back down again. So we do a mesh reduction, and we could do 40%. Sure, we'll drop that one down. And then you will see we have a much less dense mesh. We could do it again, get down even more. And we can do it one more time and get down even more. And you see here, we are now dealing with a very low polygon count mesh. And the interaction between them was very, very, very quick and responsive. So you can experiment around quite a bit. And again, that is all completely undoable. So it is a cool sculpting tool for sure, but it also handles multiple resolutions, both basically adding detail and removing detail very, very, very quickly and easily. Now, the only problem I'm seeing with this is all of the mesh that comes out of this is triangular meshes. I really prefer to work with quad meshes, but thankfully there's tools such as is it Instant Mesh or Simply Mesh? One of those two, whichever one it is, I will link it down below, which can easily take your mesh output here and clean it up and make it more game ready or animation ready by, you know, giving you nice smooth curve lines and edge loops and making it quad based, etc. So even though this tool may not do that, there are definitely tools out there that can handle that for you. So that is that so far. The cool thing is we can also now get into the painting tools. And what I can do is come down here. We could go ahead and set the color. We can pick our own color that we want. So let's pick this nice little blue. We can pick the different, let's close that down once we got our color picked. So we've got color, is that alpha? I forget exactly what these do. They don't actually have tool tips going on, but that is like a scattered brush, I believe. So we can just start painting our surface like so. Let's see if they'll switch out, see what that actually does. And you can change the alpha amount, the red, green, and blue of your actual paint color, painting effect. And you can create your texture, basically draw on your surface as you go. And then we could go ahead and switch out that color, pick something else. Let's get a green in there. Let's do like a bit of a layering here, so a low alpha, so we can add a little green over top of our surface. And then we can go here into texture editing. And here you can see it can actually, so this mesh does not have any texture coordinates. Add texture coordinates to save texture. If you only wish to do texture mapping without use in game and use high poly, leave the low mesh value at 0. So where did low mesh go? So right here, so you can switch that. If you want to go down to 0, it will leave it as it is. So we'll go here and go, so low poly subdivision level, none. All right, so we can pick our texture size that we want to generate and have it automatically do it for us. And then you will see this will bring up our texture mapping tools. And here you can see the UV maps that it has created from our shape. So you can actually show them in lines view. There are the different UVs being used, and there is the textures on them. So I think I can load in a texture externally if I wish, but this should, I thought it would show me my texture automatically. But the cool thing here is I can now go ahead and bake that texture. So I could go here and say, here, I'll put those to this PC, go to the C folder, temp. I have no idea how many, I can't create a new folder, unfortunately. So it'll output to temp and let it create it. So here what you're seeing when it's generating the texture maps for you, you can select which kinds you want. So say I want normal map, ambient occlusion map, and a color map to be generated. I do that, click create, and then it will go ahead and create me those 3 different textures for this particular model. You'll see the ambient occlusion and such can take a little bit of time. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause this while it's running, but it's not done already, is it? No. Here, let's go check. Here, drive C, temp. Oh, here we go. Yep, there we go. So there is the 3 textures it just created for our ambient occlusion map, our color map, and our normal map. So ambient occlusion map, the color map, and the normals. So it can actually then, you can use, so if you sculpted and rendered in a very high resolution version, but you exported out a low polygon count version of it, you can use the normal map to actually capture a lot of that detail, and the ambient occlusion map to capture a lot of that detail, even though the polygonal data is no longer there. So obviously that process is very, very useful if you're doing real-time game work. So there's a lot of magic built into this particular tool. You can also export your mesh here as well. You see there. And again, you can export as OBJ or PLY formats. So if you are creating multiple resolution versions, or you're sculpting very high resolution version, but you're creating a low resolution render or export of that, you can also obviously, with this process, create the ambient occlusion map, create the normal map and the color map that goes with it from painting in here. And as you saw, this will automatically do the, yeah, I don't actually want to save anything. It can also do the painting, as you saw that we did right there. So it is a very powerful, very cool tool. Coincidentally, if you want to do an export, you can also do it here. Same format, same process, but you don't have to go into the paint tool in order to get to the export mesh. Just want to make sure that was clear. So you got, again, the subdivision and unsubdivision. We've also got here, we can change between a perspective and orthogonal camera, and we can also render. So we could do an image render like this, and then we can save out the results right there. But you can see there is our rendered image. So very cool stuff. I love these free tools, and I think MeshMolder is definitely a very capable sculpting tool. Now the question is, if you're already committed to the, say, Blender workflow, why wouldn't you just use the Blender tools? Well, they are improving rapidly, so that is a very valid question. But if you are not necessarily sold into that workflow, or you like the look of this better, definitely do check it out. It is a very, very cool tool, and is very much a spiritual successor to Sculptris. So if you loved Sculptris before, but you're kind of disappointed that it is no longer being developed, definitely check out MeshMolder. This is a very, very cool tool, and hopefully it gets more love in the future. All right, that's it. Let me know what you thought. Comments down below. Are you going to be checking this out? Do you already use an existing sculpting tool? If so, what? Otherwise, let me know what you think. All right, talk to you all later. Goodbye.